Hi, how are you all doing? It is a Monday, even though this day seems to have gone on for absolutely ever, and it feels like the end of the week. Great to have you here. If you're watching live, do say hello in the comments so I know who's here. It's great to have you joining us, and also if you're watching back, thank you for being here. Just going to wait a couple of minutes to make sure everyone's joining because we're starting bang on 7. But if in the comments you could let me know who's watching, if you already have a concert series, if it's something that's completely new to you, what your level of experience is, that'll be really useful for me to know as part of this conversation. So please do let me know that in the chat. That'll be really helpful. So we're just going to wait a couple of minutes, grab yourself a cup of tea, coffee, something stronger, seems it's lockdown, why not? Whatever you fancy, and we'll get started in about a minute or two. Okay. Well, with this session, what we're going to be doing is going through how to have your own online concert series. So basically taking a very speedy look through the basics of running your own series, starting off with what you create, what is that going to involve doing, all the way through to the how, in effect, and where you're going to do it, as well as some tips on monetizing, how to spread your message, how to find your audience, that sort of a thing. It's going to be quite a speedy view through, but I hope it's really useful. And what this session is going to be is a starting block for the future sessions where we go on to look at how to use broadcasting software, monetizing, some more sophisticated things around live streaming, and any of the topics that come up from this as well. So hopefully it's a really good use to you. And if you have any questions, as always, there'll be Q&A at the very end, but also ping them across during the chat as well. So that'd be fantastic if you've got any information you can give me as to what your current situation is, as well as what you're hoping to do in future, if you've got any exciting plans as well. Hi, Emma. Great to have you with us. Thank you for joining. Really, really good to see you here. Okay, so we're going to wait sort of a minute or two. Probably start about 7:05 just to make sure. So also if you're drinking a cup of tea or something more exciting, also let me know in the chat what that is. It's lockdown, I think sort of weekend rules don't apply anymore, so feel free to go mad if you want to and have a more relaxing evening as well. Also, as always, these sessions are provided entirely for free, so if you'd like to make a donation, that'd be really appreciated, and you can do that at donate, if you want to donate, at coffee.com/DavidTaylor_UK. Okay, brilliant. So what I think we might do is just jump straight into it to find out a little bit more about what's going on, also what the session is, and the general overview of what we're going to be doing. So with that in mind, let's jump into it. Great to see you, David, and also Rebecca as well. Amazing you're drinking water. Okay, so this session is on how to run your own online concert series. In essence, we're going to try and do an overview in this session as to what to start from the very beginning, your total ethos as to how to find your audience, what to create at the beginning, you have no ideas, all the way through to optimizing your concert series if you've got one going already, and some few more exciting things as well. So hopefully this is going to be of use to you. We're starting off at the very beginning as well. So, with that in mind, just maybe 1 second to find the right camera for myself. Perfect. So, when it comes to finding out what do I create, it's quite a hard question, especially when working out what to do with a whole world of online concert series. It's such a huge range of what your potential thing could be, which is kind of difficult to narrow down exactly what it is you want to do, as well as the limitations of the platforms that you're doing. But what I think is a really useful place to start off at is looking at the strengths of yourself. So, in essence, that's going to be what do you enjoy creating, but also what are you great at doing? Are you a great speaker? Are you better at playing? Do you have a certain repertoire that you excel at? Do you prefer to do educational work? These are the things you need to start asking yourself. So particularly look at the strengths, things you're great at doing. That's really, really important, especially when it's going to be trying to find a niche and an audience. This is something to really latch onto at the very beginning. The second thing I just slightly touched on already, which is what do I enjoy creating? In essence, this is going to be quite a hard journey in creating your concert series, especially if you're just starting now. Not in terms of how to achieve things, but just the actual work that goes into it. So what's really useful to make sure you can keep going on a consistent basis is making sure you create something that you enjoy doing. It's going to make it so much easier for you to have this level of consistency that's important to be able to gain and grow an audience, as well as making sure that you're able to produce content, as I said, on a regular basis. So if it's something you enjoy, there's so much more of a chance of you sticking with it and doing it in the first place. So I think also not just looking at your audience, but looking at yourself internally, what are the sort of things you'd love to do during this time. Then, as I just touched on as well, what will my audience enjoy? If you have an existing audience, this is fantastic news because you already have a pre-existing relationship with them and you can ask them to watch and be a part of your art, which is amazing. So in essence, what are the things that they would enjoy? Can you already picture who your audience are? What do they look like? What are their interests? What are they going to enjoy? What feedback do you already have from them? Do they like certain types of repertoire, certain lengths of performances? And also, what do they want during lockdown? So, for example, if your audience are, let's say, young professionals with families, are they looking for something that can entertain their children during lockdown? And that could be something you can sort of reverse engineer to make something that is of interest to them and your existing audience. So that's going to be something to really take into account during all of this, which is really useful to do. Then something that's really important to consider is timing. So how long will the performance be? And also, what is the frequency of that performance? Which are two very important questions. So just to jump ahead to the second point, frequency is very important, partly for your audience in terms of understanding how often it's going to be, to put it into their diary, to have it part of their weekly routine. Even though that we're in lockdown month 50 million, I think people are still wanting to add things and find variety, but at the same time have things that are a staple that you can sort of have as part and parcel of their daily routine and something a bit more normal and timetable to get into live to make it not feel like Groundhog Day every day. So having an element of frequency is important, but for yourself, making sure it's not overly ambitious. One thing I find from talking to musicians and ensembles and people is that in general, there's this over ambition to provide on a very consistent basis that's very, very frequent. So in essence, maybe don't commit twice a week if it's something that you're going to potentially have problems providing. So make sure it is frequent, but also realistic in how often you're able and capable of providing something. Then on timing, how long will the performance be? Also something that's really useful to think about, but especially when looking at your audience. What are they able to commit to time-wise? What are people's attention spans during lockdown? I think around 45 minutes to an hour is certainly ample. I wouldn't go anywhere beyond that in terms of people sitting down to enjoy your content. Not because there's anything wrong with your art, just because of what attention spans are like during COVID and also in the digital space, which is different to a concert hall. Then another thing to think about is, should you have a paywall? So this is obviously a topic that we're all wrestling with. Should you put your concerts to be ticketed, or should they be free to the world and ask for donations? We're going to have a little thing in a second about PRS in the UK, which is our copyright law around performances, which is a very topical thing for us. But in essence, this is a conversation you need to have with yourself. Do you want to try and grow your audience initially and hopefully ask for donations, etc.? Or is it something that you're very, very adamant that you want to have a paywall to start off with, that you ask for people to contribute straight away? That's certainly something for discussion. I genuinely think that organisations have a harder time with the ticketed paywall events because they are faceless organisations. And in essence, people don't necessarily want to spend £10 for a single concert when they could spend £5.99 for Netflix or Disney Plus, or £7.99 to watch Medici, which is an entire subscription music service. But I think as individual musicians, we have a really, really good opportunity here to do ticketing, because in essence, the ticket itself is, when your audience member buys this, is someone purchasing the support of you. And you can really play into this idea of it's a supporting story, that you're an individual, you have a personality, you have a relationship with the audience member. And that's something that these big orchestras or organizations cannot do. So for us, I think that's a really big advantage. And then the other question to really look at is, should it be live streamed or pre-recorded? And by that, I mean, should it go out as live like this is, where you can chat directly to your audience, you see things in real time, you can see the comments, you can talk and have a conversation with people? Or should it be something that's pre-recorded? So either that it is a pre-recorded piece of content that is completely standalone that people consume whenever they want, or even, as some orchestras are doing, most orchestras are doing, pre-recording their content but putting it out as a live stream. So in essence, it looks like a live broadcast, but it was recorded a day, a week, 2 weeks earlier. The benefits of live stream is you can build relationships and rapport with people. You can see people in the comments and have chats. And that is what's really going to drive the relationship where you can start to ask people for money. In addition, the algorithms on social media really are pro live streams. That's going to certainly help things. But on the flip side, then it does mean that if you make mistakes, etc., that's then an issue. You can't necessarily tweak things after you've done them in the same way of doing an edit with a video. So it depends on how you're wanting to do that. But personally, I would certainly recommend live just because of having this relationship building aspect to it. Moving on, I'm going to touch on this exceptionally briefly. So in the UK, if you're not from the UK, completely ignore this for the next 2 seconds. This month we've had brought in a new online concert license for your ticketed events online. In essence, I did an entire live stream video on this on Thursday, which I'll have a link to in the description, or you can go on my profile and have a look back, which goes through all of the details for this, so I won't cover them here. But in essence, this is the things you need to know quickly are it is UK only. It only applies to ticketed events, and it only applies to ticketed events where one of the pieces of music are in copyright. So if you have a piece, an entire concert of Bach, Handel, Mozart, none of those pieces are in copyright, and therefore you are completely fine. You don't need one of these licenses. But in essence, that is something to think about in your repertoire choices and also the places that you're hosting concerts. So, or if you want to do ticketed or not ticketed. So that's certainly something to consider, but do look at the video from Thursday, which will hopefully really help you with that. And I'll make sure that's coming up somewhere in the top corners, whichever one that is, if you are watching back as well with a little link. So, moving on to the streaming aspect, especially if it's live streaming. So what is streaming? One thing I mentioned was, is it actually live? So you may have noticed lots of orchestras over the last 10 months have done live stream performances. But in essence, those themselves have not been live performances. It has just gone out as a live stream. And by that I mean it is a pre-recorded video which someone in the marketing team or editing team has then decided to broadcast as a live video. So in essence, they have the time to be able to create, tweak, edit, really play with the performance to make sure it's perfect, and then put it out as live. And the benefit of that is that you then have the option of chatting with people in the comments as the performance is going on. In addition, you can also react to people in real time. If you want, you can mix this live element of someone chatting live with the pre-recorded performance. So that is certainly there. With streaming as well, you can also do it directly live, which is like this. So you just press go on your camera or computer or whatever it would be, and in essence, you are directly live to your audience at a certain time. So that is something as well that you can do. One thing to look at is what do you need for these things? And we're going to come back to this later on. But in essence, all you really need for one of these things is your phone. I genuinely believe that the camera in your phone is better than ones that you can buy for hundreds of pounds more. So you do not need to go out and buy extra equipment. All the social media platforms allow you to go live from them. If you're doing a ticketed event, there are options to make you be able to go live or provide ticketed content from your phone, which we'll cover later on as well. So you do not need to be like these orchestras who are spending £10,000 per robotic fancy live stream camera. You can do your live stream performances from a phone. And also, what is your stream going to be? It doesn't necessarily have to be a concert. It can be a workshop, it can be a talk, it can be an amalgamation of all these different ideas. It can be something completely new. So whatever you're doing, it can be entirely flexible as to how you want to run it and what you think your audience want, which is really fascinating. So I hope that is of interest for getting your creative juices going in taking what is this exciting format and running with it, hopefully. So when it comes to streaming, we have two options, which are the social media, outward focused, not ticketed, public to the world social media performances. And then on the flip side, we have private performances. So these are either ticketed or they are hidden behind paywalls and various things. So first off, we're going to take social media. So this is the thing that's going to be easiest for everyone to grasp because we all generally use social media to a certain extent. For a start, there is Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitch. All of those have live streaming capabilities in them. And in a second, we're going to run through those and also the benefits, pros and cons, the hows of every single platform. We're not going to focus on Twitch, which is quite strange, as Twitch is the largest live streaming platform on the internet, but there isn't really a pre-existing audience for classical music on Twitch. And in addition, it is unlikely that your existing audience will have accounts there. So as a result of that, we're not going to focus on it, but it is certainly something that is an unclaimed territory. So if you want to really innovate and try and work out what your online performance or concert series could be, Twitch could be a great place for this. It originally started as a gaming platform for gaming live streamers, but over lockdown, comedy has been huge on Twitch as well, so there's certainly scope for really playing with that as a platform. Then on the flip side, we have privates. These are things where you are selling tickets for. If you are wanting to do a ticketed performance or series or entire concert festival, I'd highly recommend a platform called Tidze, Tidze, which is just on the side there, which is an exceptional platform which has all your ticketing and live streaming and pre-concert drinks all in the same platform. In addition, you could do private events through Vimeo as an option by either selling tickets on Eventbrite or Ticket Source and sending people a direct link to Vimeo. There's also something called Vimeo OTT, which stands for over the top, which is a surreal term, but basically an OTT service is something like Netflix, Disney Plus, Amazon Prime, BBC iPlayer, those things which are a platform that people subscribe to, pay money to, with the exception of iPlayer, and then have access to content. So that could be an option for you. The third thing would be video calls. So you could sell tickets to a private Zoom concert or a private Skype performance or one of those sort of things. They are all options for you. So while I grab a drink quickly, as I'm about to start coughing halfway through this, do you have any questions in the chat that have come up from this already, or do you want me to keep ploughing on going through this? And I will also quite mercifully just mute it at the same time on the microphone. Okay, so we will plow on. So we're now going to go through each of the social media streaming platforms and the benefits, pros and cons, and little features of each that may be worth taking into consideration when working out the home for your live stream performance series on social media. So Facebook, you can live stream both on computer and on mobile devices. The maximum quality you can capture is 720p. If you've been buying televisions or looking at cameras or anything, you may be aware of these qualities. In general, most things are 1080, which is the next sort of level up from 720. But then there's 4K, which is the one beyond there as the sort of the highest quality when you get televisions. And now there's 8K coming in soon as well. So 720 may seem low, but we'll come on to why that's not necessarily a bad thing soon. You can also schedule live streams 7 days in advance. It gives your audience notice of those events, which is great. So they'll also get notifications coming up that they're happening. It gets that people will be prompted with these little nudges of notifications, as well as just giving them an idea that things are happening in advance. You can also make Facebook events for those live streams, which gives more information and reminders. You can also have it as a chat discussion area around your live stream, have conversation around it, or build community, which is also a really useful feature to have, all based around it. And then also you can have real-time comments from audiences, notification reminders for audiences before and after the live stream, and videos do remain afterwards on Facebook unless you decide to not to have them there and to take them down afterwards, which is certainly a benefit. Right, then moving on to YouTube streaming. So for YouTube, you can live stream on a computer and a mobile device, but there's certainly a caveat for that in a second. The highest quality you can do is 4K, so you can live stream in 4K quality on YouTube, which is really incredible, but also not necessarily as much of a win as we'll find out in a second. You can schedule live streams for any time in the future, which gives your audience notice of what's coming up. But that's not just limited to 7 days. If you want, you can do it 2-3 years in advance. It's that far in advance for how you can schedule them. There's no limit for that. Again, you can have real-time comments for audience members. You can have a live video section on your YouTube channel, not only for what has been live, but also what is coming up. As I decide to knock my microphone over halfway through this. Sorry for the noise. So you can have a live video section so people can see what's coming up in the future. And on top of that, you can have basic notification reminders for audience members and during live streams. And the video also remains afterwards unless you want to have it taken down. One small issue is that if you want to live stream from your mobile device on your phone, which I think most of you will want to do, you will need 1,000 subscribers to go live on mobile. But we have a workaround for this, which we'll cover towards the end of this session. In terms of putting up content from a video call onto YouTube, there's certainly some great ways around that. So this is one of the questions which has just come up. I'll just pop that up onto the screen. Thank you very much, Helena, for your question. One of the best ways of doing it, obviously, would be to film that as a video standalone, so you can then edit it as you wish, and that way is the easiest thing to put onto there as a live element. It kind of depends on what your video call software would be if you're able to do it live, but certainly YouTube's a great place for having that there. So I think certainly trying to find ways of either editing it separately, so you've recorded all the content offline, would be really useful for YouTube, or there are certainly options depending on what if you're running a Mac or a Windows device for doing video calls live. I personally use a software called Ecamm for live streaming, which goes directly to YouTube, which is what I'm using now. And for that, I can bring in guests live at any point whenever I want, either using Skype or by using a direct link. The other options would be a service called Restream, which also goes out directly through a browser. And there's several others as well that you can potentially search for. And I'll certainly make sure if you have any questions, if you put them in an email or something, I will answer those for you. So moving on to Instagram streaming. So this is one that is only available on a mobile device. The maximum quality is 720 again, like Facebook. For this, there is no scheduling of your live stream events, but you do get real-time comments for audiences. There are also notification reminders for audience members during live streams. But unlike the other two, the video does not remain afterwards. It's there for 24 hours and then disappears. But just to go back to the idea of video calls, you can invite guests to join your live stream from their device during the live stream itself. So say, for example, if your guest is watching on their phone, you can press a button and they can jump in. You have a sort of a side-by-side conversation with them during the live stream, which is really useful to have. And then on to Twitter for streaming. So it is only available on mobile normally, but you can use additional broadcasting software to use a computer and go through Periscope to do that, which is Twitter's more comprehensive broadcasting offer. The maximum quality is 720 again. Similarly to Instagram, there's no scheduling for this, but again, you do get real-time comments for audiences, notification reminders for audiences during the live streams, but users do have to enable that as a feature. The video does remain afterwards unless you delete it. And with Twitter, you can also invite guests to join the live streams from their device, which is great. One thing to bear in mind, as I mentioned, is that their feature is sometimes called Periscope, and there's a separate Periscope app, but in essence, it will push out to your Twitter account regardless. So just be aware that there may be a terminology issue there. Things to consider when choosing where is best to choose as a social media platform for your live streaming if you're going the social media route. The first is that quality isn't everything. So you may notice that 3 of these platforms have 720 as their quality, whereas YouTube has 4K. However, it is unlikely that your audience will be watching things in 4K, especially if they're on a mobile device. Partly because of internet speeds, and partly because of the size of the screen as well. So in essence, even if you're broadcasting things in beautiful 4K, most people will be watching due to their internet speed in 720 and at best 1080, especially if they're on mobile data as well. So don't necessarily worry that the quality is not going to be there on the other platforms. I don't think that's an issue. But what I think is really important is where is your current audience? So if you already have a pre-existing audience on Twitter, there's not necessarily an argument that you should go to YouTube for that 4K. Maybe stick with things on Twitter as a live streaming platform. Or if you currently have a huge following on Instagram, how can you create content that is best there? So if you already have an audience that's existing, I think it is potentially shooting yourself in the foot to try and go away from that. Maybe really sort of double down into providing that content for your audience in that place. So certainly do that. Again, one other thing to consider would be Which do you enjoy using the most? If you really hate Instagram but love Facebook, then use things on Facebook. If you're more likely to do it because you enjoy it, certainly go that route, regardless as to other external factors. The best thing you can do is get going with these certain things. So I think that is really useful to have a think about. As one final thing, it's also worth considering what equipment you have and whether it's mobile or computer. Realistically, unless you have external cameras, you'd be doing live streams on your computer from a webcam, which is probably going to look less than good. But there are some workarounds where you can either use your phone as a webcam or you can live stream from your phone as well. I'd certainly recommend using your phone just because of the quality of camera, and also the quality of microphones will be better than if you have anything on your computer, and it stops you from having to purchase things at the very beginning at a time when we're all strapped for cash. So I would personally recommend the mobile route, and we'll talk about how to get around the YouTube thing later on. So, streaming as a private event, selling tickets to make sure that your content is behind a paywall, that people give you the money up front for your art, your performances, and whatever it is that you're creating. So private live streams are usually sold with tickets, but if you would like, you can do free ticketed events as well if you would like people to confirm so you know who is coming, which is really beneficial. Again, as I mentioned, Tidze is an exceptional solution to this. The way I would describe it would be a combination of, Eventbrite and Zoom and a YouTube Live. So in essence, with Tidze, you have the option to sell tickets in Tidze itself. Like Eventbrite, Tidze will also send reminders to your audience. And similar to Zoom, you can have the option of interactive rooms. So you can see your audience face to face, they can ask you questions, you can hear them, and you can talk back to them. In addition, you can have a standalone piece of video content that goes out as live that people consume. But what is really interesting is you can combine the different features of like a pre-concert Zoom room and a live stream all into one ticketed event. For me, I think it's a really fascinating option if you are doing ticketed, partly for yourself, for having everything in one place and not having to struggle with having multiple things like an Eventbrite account and a Zoom to set up all in the same thing. But also for the features that it gives you alongside. I know for a fact it's also offering customer relationship management, it's something called CRM, where you can track your customers. They're going to be integrating merchandise shopping soon as well, so there's plenty of scope for growing that as a platform for yourself. And you can also list multiple events within Tidze in the same way as you would in YouTube, but these are things that are behind a ticket price. So the other option will be something like Eventbrite or Ticket Source to sell your tickets as a virtual event. Eventbrite is especially good at selling virtual events, but what you do need is to have a place that is digital to send them to. So all Eventbrite would do would be to sell you a ticket. You need to put in some form of location, like a Zoom, a Skype, a Vimeo, anything like that. As a word of warning, you shouldn't use YouTube as the location for that, even if it is an unlisted video that you're doing, as that breaks the terms and conditions on YouTube that you are reselling content, which is something that you shouldn't necessarily do. Then the other option will be to do something like Vimeo OTT, that over-the-top service. So this is the on-demand service where people will buy a subscription of, say, £5 a month, and they get to see all the videos you've created. As a word of warning, if you wanted to do live, it's very expensive, but if you're not doing live, there's a free option where Vimeo take commission off every subscription you sell. The downside is obviously you've got to create, say, a decent offering for people to see, of having a bank of performances like Netflix has a bank of films, but there's certainly ways around of doing it as well. Quite a few orchestras have used this as an option, and what they'll do is have a pre-recorded video that is launched at 7:30 on a Friday, and in essence that is a live video that everyone watches at the same time and is available afterwards. So that gets around that. Wonderful. Just a quick question from David who's jumped in, which is, if your audience is on social media, are they happy to follow you there to a private ticketed platform for the performance? I would say the answer is potentially, and it depends on how you speak to them, being the main issue. And if it is that you have an existing following, they are likely to want to support you. So I would certainly find ways of being open that you are doing things behind a ticketed performance because you want to receive money for your output, and please go and follow you there. One of the things later on is how to basically spread your message, and social media is a huge way of that. So if in essence that you are doing things behind a paywall, social media is still a great way of pushing that as a message, and also to tell people about your concerts if they're not going to necessarily find out about them. Okay, so just a quick overview of Tides quickly. So with Tides, you can create your own beautifully crafted, unique channel. It basically has like a page like Netflix or a social media account where you have basically, in essence, a brand. You can broadcast up to 1080 with great audio with up to 320 kilobytes per second. You can create on-demand video for people to consume as well. And also you can sell tickets through this platform. If you're based in the UK, certainly do check up on the PRS video as well, as that's going to be applicable to Tides. So just bear that in mind when you're thinking about that as a solution. So what do you need for all these wonderful live streaming options? In essence, you need one thing, a phone. And I'm very aware that it's very easy for me to say, as I'm currently on a mirrorless camera with several devices and an external microphone and all these flashy gadgets to try and do this stream. But in essence, when you're starting at the beginning, at the moment, we don't necessarily want to be spending lots of money on the outlay. So a phone is by far going to have a much better camera than you could probably buy without spending £500-600. In addition, the microphone without adding any add-ons to the phone is going to be better. Realistically, also the live streaming functions are going to be very useful as well from being able to do that from a mobile device. So I would completely ignore spending money at the very beginning. Get going with what you've got in your pocket. Especially because, for example, most phones have a 4K camera or anything similar. So in essence, you're going to be great to go from the offset. There's so many options as well for if you're wanting to do things further, of having that close to you with a computer that's doing the live stream. But that's a bit more complicated. But equally, I'd say get going with your phone and start to make it more complicated and adding on things later. There's no need for spending big bucks at the beginning to get going with this. And in essence, I don't think until a certain point you really need to. So for me, I think get going with your phone. There's no need for you to have to go out and buy anything else at the moment. Okay, so we're now moving on to the advanced live streaming section. So this is, in essence, we're going to be looking at broadcasting software. So if you don't know about broadcasting software, this is something that I'm going to use a very, very bad analogy that is akin to or similar to PowerPoint for video. So in essence, you're going to be able to have different scenes, things you can add to that eventually go out to an audience. But unlike it being a slide that is static that someone will see in a classroom, it will be a scene, which is a video that people consume and will be going pushed out to social media or to wherever your concert is. So as I mentioned Tides earlier, you need a broadcasting software to push your content out to Tides. What also this enables you to do is to schedule live streams on social media. You can't really schedule from a mobile device on Facebook, but one of the benefits is that you can connect broadcasting software to a Facebook live stream, which allows you to do scheduling or do that from your phone. It allows you, in addition, if you have cameras, to connect multiple cameras to have different angles. You can increase the production quality. So similar to this, you can have your face in the bottom corner. You can have flashing graphics. You can have things saying "Buy my CD now" in big letters. You can really step things up by playing with these scenes. And also it allows you to connect to streaming services like Tidze, like YouTube, like Facebook. You can connect your broadcasting software to anything in the world with something called an RTMP link. I know this is taking a step up, but the good news is the next session next week is why every musician should use a broadcasting software and how to do it. So this is what we'll cover next week if you're fascinated as to what this could be. The good news for all of this is broadcasting software sounds something really complex and crazy and expensive. And the good news is it isn't. So the free software that a lot of people use for streaming are open broadcast software, which is a more flexible option, which is free. Or there is Streamlabs, which is simpler but also free. Both of these I highly recommend. We'll go over both of them next week as well, but it is something that is very, very useful to use. And say, for example, if you want additional graphics on your stream, you want to do multiple camera angles, you want to balance the audio a little bit more, you would like to have some sort of interactive element or widget in the bottom corner, these are great functions to have. Well, another thing you can do, if they're the computer options, if you're wanting to live stream from a phone and connect it to YouTube, you can use an app called Streamlabs. So Streamlabs itself has its own mobile app. The huge benefit of this is this lets you live stream to YouTube with fewer than 1,000 subscribers. So earlier I mentioned that you can't go live on YouTube with a mobile device, which is true. But what you can do is connect a broadcasting software, even if that broadcasting software is a mobile device, to YouTube. And this means you can get around that 1,000 subscriber limit on there. And the good news for that is it's basically as simple as just connecting your YouTube account and press go live. There's nothing more crazy you necessarily have to do for that. So that's a great way of getting around it, and a great way of using your mobile to do these fancier live streams if you want to go down that route. Just as a mini example of what it would then look like, this is the Streamlabs app on, not Streamlabs, the Streamlabs window for a PC. So in essence, on the left-hand side, you can see scenes. This will be what, in essence, you would think as slides. And you would have different slides or scenes depending on what you want to have as a setup. But in essence, it's not necessarily a scary thing to look at. It looks very similar to having, say, the presentation mode on PowerPoint already done up. And on the right-hand side, you can also see the audio mixer for balancing your audio as well. So this is just a little bit of information to see something that isn't quite as scary. And in essence, this is all you'd have to deal with for that. Another thing to sort of mention for your concert series is the possibility of going live in more than one place. So in essence, you can only really press go live on your computer or on your camera on any one of these social apps at one time, which means it will be one Facebook Live or one YouTube or one Twitter Live, one of those various things. But if you're wanting to, say, for example, go live in multiple places, whether you have followings in two different social media platforms where your audience don't have overlap, or say, for example, if you're doing it for an organization, you want to cover all your bets, you can do something called Restreaming, which is where you go live in more than one place at once. So in essence, you send your live stream signal out to a Restreaming service, and then they will then share it to these multiple places where you tell it to go. A little bit more complex, but it's not too bad to do. The two that I recommend are Caster.io and Restream.io. These are both paid services, but they do always have offers. It's a monthly subscription service. You can cancel when you want if you say an on-demand performance. For this, you need a broadcasting software. So you need to be able to tell it your stream to go to one of these Restreaming places, which then share it. But as a potential solution, Restream can now be used as a broadcasting software. They've now launched an in-browser broadcasting feature, so you can do that from there directly and like sort of have everything in the same place. And it's quite a simple feature to use. So just to sort of give you a visual demonstration as to what that would look like, this is something from Restream's own website. So in essence, you are the camera at the center of this little white camera circle. And from there, your dotted line will go out to the orange circle with the R, which is the Restream logo. And from your one signal out to Restream will then go to 1,000,001 places on the internet where you would want. The benefits of doing something like this are being able to connect to multiple audiences in multiple locations. With Restream, you can also combine all the chats into one place and share it as well, so you're not having to look at multiple places. But equally, if you're wanting to develop one place as a whole, it may be worth not doing Restreaming and just focusing on one particular outlet. So this is just for more advanced if you're wanting to go down this route of connecting to multiple audiences in multiple places. So as we mentioned earlier briefly about your audiences, how do you market your audience, your online content to your audiences? So what we're going to cover now are the nuts and bolts of what you need to do in marketing your online concert. You will need three things in essence, which are a concert series name, an image or a photo of what is going to represent your concert series, and you're going to need something which is called copy, which is a marketing term which basically means text about the thing that you're doing. So in essence, you would need to have some paragraph which describes what your concert series is, that basically you can copy and paste is suitable for everywhere, whether that's a press release or for social media or for the little description under the video itself. So copy is basically the official text for what it is that you're doing. So those are three things to really work on at the beginning. They always sound quite simple, but it's great to have those three things nailed down at the beginning that you've got them. And from having that, then you can start doing your promotion and setting up of your events. From having those three things, you can do the next step, which is telling the world about it. Following on from David's thing earlier, social media is a great place to tell the world about it. Whether it's ticketed or on social media, you can announce your events, you can set reminders, you can create content to promote it. What is great, say for example, is if you're doing a concert on a Friday, instead of just saying, please come to my concert on Friday, at the start of the week, instead you could do a short little video. You could do an interview about the music that you're performing. You could say why it's exciting, why you're looking forward to it, and create genuinely authentic, audience-focused content about the performance you're doing later in the week that will genuinely interest people. And that's the thing that's going to have more of an impact than just please buy my consult or please turn up. That's really useful to do. A great thing you can do through social media as well is find new audiences. You can connect with new people. It's a great way to expand the people you're currently existing. One thing that may be worth doing is looking at Facebook events, whether that's on that your live stream is on Facebook or it's not. It's a great way of pulling people and having them do reminders for what is a free feature on Facebook. Another good way to tell the world is by doing email. There's some great solutions for doing great mailing lists for free, which we'll cover in a second, I think. That's a great way, again, of just reminding people and nudging them about what's on. Potentially as well, looking at what we said earlier about content being really useful. Not just say that you're doing a thing, but tell them what you're covering, try and provide information as a bit of a hook into doing that. Event listings are also an option. They're potentially a little bit saturated at the moment as everyone is currently doing events. But if you can find somewhere else for you to have your event hosted, say for example, a What's On guide, anything local, general local radio stations, also a great way. But one thing I think we're constantly overlooking is the old-fashioned way of doing this, which is basically just telling people you know. So give them a ring if you're on the phone with them or you pass them at social distance in the streets. Let them know you're doing a performance. Ask them to come and watch. Basically go back to this old-fashioned word-of-mouth elements, even though we are still in lockdown. That's a really powerful way of doing it as well. So basically try and use every option open to tell people about what it is that you're doing. Some things that could be of use to you for doing that. So Canva is a free app for mobile devices, and there's also a web option as well. And that's great for creating images and branding. Before that sounds way too scary, in essence, it is a drag and drop. Here are some templates, please put in your information. So if you're starting from scratch, have no tech knowledge, no design knowledge, that is a great resource for free where you can create really high-end graphics without needing to do anything. Hootsuite is a social media scheduler. There's a free version, which is wonderful. That's a really powerful way of, say, for example, taking all the stress of doing 4 or 5 posts on 4 or 5 platforms at the same time. You could go onto a social media scheduler where you can do your Facebook, Twitter, Instagram all at the same time. And you can schedule them so you can then go away and think about other things for the rest of the week rather than constantly having to be glued to your phone or your computer. For mailing lists and emails, MailChimp I highly recommend as a free option. It is GDPR compliant, or now ICO for Information Commission for being in the UK. That's a really great, powerful resource as well. And then again, Eventbrite, whatever you're doing in terms of selling tickets or just letting people know that it's on and doing a free ticket reservation element, Eventbrite is a great way of doing that. All of those are free resources. Eventbrite does take commission if it's a paid event, but apart from that, it is free. So a couple of tips on how to make your live stream great. This is in essence sort of once you've got the camera rolling, what makes it really good and powerful, and why will people want to come to this rather than something else? So some tips. Number 1, include your audience. People come to these things for community. This is not a television broadcast in essence. This is a live stream where your audience have a direct way of corresponding to you as an individual, as an artist. So make sure you include your audience. So whether that's by saying hello, having options to look at comments and speak to people directly, ask them to be involved in the choosing repertoire for the next week. Find ways to get your community and your audience to be a part of your live stream and start to build this as a mini hub that will return to you because they come here for the community. A great way of doing this is to do calls to action. So things like, as I just mentioned, choose the next piece next week or ask me a question. Anything that directs people to do a thing is something called a call to action, being the technical phrase. You can really play around with this as a potential option. You can also have calls to action which are, please go and buy my CD, or please support me by clicking X. They're also calls to action, so make sure to include those as ways not only to get your audience to engage, but potentially for you to make money off the back of this as well. What is really important with this is also to reply to your audience, not necessarily live in one of these sessions, but also if they've commented during it, go back afterwards, after the event, and reply to people in the comment section, like what they've said. Try and think of something genuine about their comment that you can reply to organically, and that will really help you. And then also smarten up your live stream, whether that is by making sure that your room is tidy behind you, that you are well lit, that there is no mess, that potentially you have props that are musical to make it into a TV set, or by using broadcasting software to increase the production value. There are so many things you can do, but make sure you are self-aware about smartening up your live stream. And again, the very basic of that is just making sure things are tidy. It's very simple for people to do things without really looking in the background, or making sure they're not well lit and they're not blown out by a window behind them or something like that. Just make sure you're getting the basics right, so making sure your presentation is good. And then the final step, which is something along the lines of how to make money with your live stream. Because obviously we're not wanting to do these things for free, entirely off our own back. So there are different options. You had the ticketed option, which we mentioned earlier, of having a paywall in advance and using something like Eventbrite or Ticket Source or Tidze as that barrier, but also that facility to sell tickets. A great way you can do this as well is by collecting donations during your live stream. To ask people to, if you're doing it on social media, to give money to you directly. So say, for example, if you have enjoyed this live stream, please feel free to support me in any way you can if you feel it's appropriate. Great platforms to do this are paypal.me or Coffee. And Coffee is the one that I'm using, so as a mini example. And at some point it should now finally flash up on the screen. It's about Coffee. So there is a platform where people can go and donate any money they want, whether from £1 to £1 million on both PayPal or Coffee, and that then can support you. The benefits of Coffee, and it's the reason why I personally have switched over from PayPal to Coffee, is that Coffee takes 0% commission on the money you are donated, whereas PayPal, I think off the top of my head, takes 2.9% plus 30 pence in the UK. So they will take some of that money away from you. Whereas Coffee, all the money that is donated to you goes to you directly. Another great way of doing this as well is by having some sort of form of subscriber platform. So, for example, Patreon is a great way of doing it, where people pay you monthly fee in order to support you, and off the back of that, they get access to members-only content. As a potential option for you combining these two features, Coffee also offers that as well. The session in 2 weeks' time, so that'll be on Monday the 22nd of February, we'll be going over why every musician should have a Coffee account, as I genuinely believe it's the most powerful way for us to receive money during this time, both as one-off donations but also as recurring memberships, and for being able to offer additional things such as a shop. And when I mention shop, that is one of the indirect ways of making money. You can use these platforms to offer other services and products. So whether it's your teaching, your arranging, your composing, you can also offer your CDs, any arrangements you've done already, commissions you want to do for people. I know someone who's doing great vocal postcards at the moment for people who are stuck in lockdown, who does as a commission. So that's certainly a way of doing those sort of things that could be of use as a way of making money. So there are some really good tools potentially for you to monetize your live stream, either through ticketed or through these other ways of having additional, leveraging the attention that you have and the relationships you build to have one-off donations, recurring subscribers, or indirect ways of monetizing your content. Just to go through that indirect thing in a little bit more detail, within your performances, you could have adverts either for local businesses who want to do things, and this would be trying to look at your audience in essence and reverse engineer what they like. What do my audience really want during lockdown? What other things could they be interested in? Whether that's that you may think that they're probably all wine buffs and would love wine, you could do a virtual wine tasting halfway through. Or if you don't want to go that far, just a small advert and a logo in the bottom corner. You're not the only business who's struggling during this time. There are other businesses who want to reach new audiences and to sell their products. So you could sell advertising time and space within your performances. In addition, what products or services could you do that your audience wants as well? Whether that's lessons, educational content, arrangements, compositions, there's so much you could potentially do around that. Going on from the recording side, you could sell the recordings that you have. If it's a digital download, I highly recommend Bandcamp as a platform. So unlike uploading your content to streaming service, you get way more of the commission, which is I think around 70% for Bandcamp. But they're also doing commission-free Fridays at the first Friday of every month, where they take 0% commission, you get all the money. So if you want to create some recordings during lockdown and sell them to your audience after your performances, that's a great way of doing that. You can also offer Amazon affiliate links. So whether that's this is basically where if someone clicks on a link that goes to Amazon and sells a product, you receive a small commission. So you can sell either, let's say, for example, the grade books of the educational content you've done, any repertoire you've sold, the instrument or microphone you're using, the bow, the rosin, the mouthpiece, the reed, anything through there you could potentially use as a way of monetizing in a smaller way there. and you can offer other services and products, so as we mentioned at the beginning. But this, for me, is a great time to think outside the box, try and work out something really left field that your audience will want or need that you can offer them, or in essence that a third party may be really fascinated in connecting to your audience. This is where you can monetize things in quite a niche way, hopefully. Wonderful. So that's the end of this session. So I'm going to jump straight into Q&A if you have any things from there. So just to jump into one of the questions, great one already. So on Coffee, you do have the option to get paid through PayPal, then PayPal still takes a cut. Stripe does take, well, actually, all the money comes to you. Stripe takes a small element. I think it is 1.4, 1.7% plus something. So it's still small. PayPal's commission for a checkout is significantly smaller than the PayPal.me commission. There is still a small amount of something from there, but it's nowhere near as much as the PayPal.me link, where people would normally donate money through. So that may there'll be a small element of that, but still there's going to be significantly more money through Coffee than there would be through PayPal.me. A benefit for the subscription service, again, from Coffee compared to Patreon, is that Coffee will also take zero fees themselves from the subscription service. It's just down to your checkout element where there'll be a small amount of money from there. But do let me know if you have any of the questions from here. That'd be really good to know if you have anything specific, either to what I've said already or anything that you've got burning in the back of your mind leading up to this session about your own situation. That'd be really good to know. I'd love to hear some of your questions. Just as well as shameless self-promotion, if you are interested in helping support this channel, it'd be great if you were able to subscribe in any way, shape or form to the channel. It helps the channel grow, but also equally, if you'd like to donate, you're very welcome to do so at ko-fi.com for coffee /David Taylor UK, and all the information is in the bottom corner down there. Also, there's a link in the description to that if that's of interest as well. But do any of you have any further questions in regards to anything we've covered, and maybe any left field questions for other things as well? More than happy to have a chat through anything and everything that comes up from this. Well, while you're having a think of potential questions, just as a mini look forward to next week, what we're going to be doing is looking at a session as to why musicians should use broadcasting software and how to use it. So this is going back to those three things of OBS, Open Broadcast Software, Streamlabs, and the Streamlabs app. So in essence, what are the benefits of using these services rather than hitting the Go Live button? We're also going to be doing a step-by-step guide as to setting that up, helping you have a follow-through, a visual guide as to what to do and which buttons to click. As wonderful and as great and as free they are, at first look, they're not necessarily that simple to get on with, but after 2 minutes of someone showing you how to do it, it is very simple. So hopefully that session is going to be a really useful one for helping you do that. Okay, so my questions are coming through slower on, I've just seen. So advice on setting ticket price. I think it is great to equate a ticket price to another object. So say, for example, if it is the price of a bottle of wine, the price of a beer, the price of buying a coffee, which is where the coffee subscription service comes from. If you can do that, that's a really useful way of being able to set your ticket price as a base amount. As experience of working with both individuals and organizations, the donation model tends to have people donate more than what you'd probably charge them for a ticket. So that may be something to bear in consideration when coming up with these things as to what is the way forward for that. But in essence, it comes down to a personal choice. If it's behind the paywall, I wouldn't go further than £10 for a ticket, just because after then you're going way beyond what orchestras are providing and also well beyond what any on-demand service like Netflix and Disney Plus are offering, which means that sort of even though you have a stronger pull from being an individual, it is kind of going against the grain of consumer behavior online. So I wouldn't necessarily go further than the £10 or $10 model, but there's certainly some ways of potentially doing this. But also, yes, this video will be available afterwards as well. So if you want to watch back at any point, don't worry if you've not taken notes. You can watch back at any time. It's always available on YouTube. The slides from this video as well will be available tomorrow morning on my website and I can't actually remember the domain name for this. So I think it is under, I can't remember if it's shop or store. Bear me 1 second. So this will be going live on david-taylor.org/store, and that'll be a free download from there as well. So you're not having to pay for anything for having these slides, but they will be available there tomorrow morning, hopefully, in case that's of use, including links, URLs to everything you've seen hyperlinked throughout that presentation as well, if that's of use to you. So I'm more than happy to share those with you, and that'll be on the website tomorrow morning. Also, if any questions come over in the next week or so, feel free to ping them across. I know this is one of these sessions where you get bombarded with lots of information, so feel free to reach out at any point. Equally, if you're watching this back, say 1 week to a year in the future, feel free to reach out with any questions. More than happy to answer those either via email, which is on my website, david-taylor.org, or on social media. Feel free to hit me up on there with any questions as well. But wonderful. So thank you so much for joining. It's been great to have you here. I hope your week gets into a great start, and thank you for being a part of it. And I really hope you can join me next time for the next session, which is on how to use broadcasting software and why you should also be using it as well. That's me a bit more of a practical, showing you which things to click. So there'll be fewer slides, less of a lecture, and more of a how-to, showing hands-on how do we use these crazy live streaming software things. So hopefully that'll be of use to you. And look forward to having you next time. So thank you so much for being here, and take care. Bye-bye.